this one. I don't see in my file where we have the one that I thought would have been adjusted or that was slower. There are portions of it, Your Honor, that do appear to slow down and play at a more consistent pace with seconds, and then there's portions that ramp way up and play very, very quickly. So to the extent that we don't have a consistently, like right now it's, and then it can go really, really fast. So this is what we're stuck with, it sounds like. We still have the issue of authentication and the witnesses, the actual witness who made the video with his home and his camera and all that stuff.
But my understanding is this was the home security, Mr. Olson's home security camera.
Right.
Right. He wasn't watching at the time, so as far as his view of it, his view only comes from whatever the video is.
Correct.
Okay. And that was downloaded based on a request from Glynn County PD, and this is the version of that that ultimately ended up in the file.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Well, based on that, the objection's noted. I'm going to overrule it. We'll go ahead and move forward, but I'll do that on the record.
Very good.
Okay. All right. Let's get the panel.
Would the court allow me to clear up the mistake in front of the jury about my reading of the video so that the jury doesn't get the impression I'm trying to hide something? Is that okay? Just to say that I've looked back over it and that I see where some of the seconds play out a little more slowly and then they speed up. And my confusion.
As long as it's not testimonial.
It won't be.
You can just say you object.
Okay.
Or you can do that and withdraw your objection.
That portion of the objection.
Let's do that.
For the jury.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I believe we've resolved the matters that were before the court. Mr. Sheffield?
Yes, thank you, Judge. The issue I was having was my belief that we had two separate videos of the same time period. And going back and looking through our records, my confusion stemmed from portions of the video actually play with what appears to be in time. And then it speeds up and it eats up a bunch of time all at once. So I appreciate the opportunity to go back and look at it. It appears there is only one video, and it's quite a roller coaster of how the time plays. So to the extent that we thought there was two, I'll withdraw that objection. Still, though, the objection on being able to authenticate it by the owner of the video. Thank you, Judge.
That's overruled. Go ahead.
Thank you. So with regard to State's Exhibit 115, we've tendered it into evidence, and you were able to review it. Is that correct?
Yes.
I probably should on the record say it's admitted. Go
Thank
ahead.
you, Judge. So the exhibit states 115 having been tendered and admitted. Did you get a chance at the break to review it again, just briefly?
Yes, ma'am.
And does it have that jerkiness and that speeding up with the seconds?
Yes, it does.
And once again, how much is the timestamp off?
An hour and 5 minutes.
Okay. And was it your understanding that Mr. Olson was not home at the time of the homicide?
Correct.
And this is something you downloaded later?
Correct. Yes, ma'am. After the request, he told me, yeah, it's already burning, and provided it.
Okay.
later.
And you spoke to him personally,
Yes, ma'am.
and you're the one who requested this.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. At this time, the state will publish State's Exhibit 115, and for the record, we're going to do the relevant portions of this long video.
Make sure you get timestamps on the record.
Correct, yes. So for the record, State's Exhibit 115, the state will be starting this on the top where it says Channel 4, 2020, 02:23, timestamp 02:07:55 p.m. Is that acceptable,
Yes, ma'am.
Detective? Ending at 2:16:30. All right, so Detective Marcy, we're going to go through and look at some things.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So first off, when we go back, starting again at 2:08:26. We have our timer moving very quickly. Now, this person who's walking up, at this point in time, now, who do you believe that to be?
Mr. Arbery.
Okay. And where is Mr. Arbery right now at 2:09:15?
He's standing in the front yard of 220 Satilla.
Now, where does he go?
Into the residence.
And is that the image that we saw where the camera angles down like this? The first couple of clips?
It may be. There's no timestamp on what Mr. English provided us. It's a reasonable association.
Stopping at 2:12:21. What is the jury looking at here?
If you look just above the colon between the 212, that is Mr. Albenze, the 911 caller, walking into frame from his house.
All right, so this is the front porch at 219 Satilla Drive, right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. When you went to Mr. Albenze's house, where was his house?
If you go up the road there, the road turns left slightly, His house is in that turn.
Restarting the video. And what's the jury looking at here? Stopping it at 2:12:45 in this area right up here.
That's Mr. Albenze calling 911.
And what do we have coming down the street here?
It's a car. I haven't gone and ID'd that car.
But we have a car coming down the street.
Yes, ma'am.
And this is 2:13:38. Starting again. And what happened there?
Mr. Arbery steps out of the front door off the porch and begins running north to the right on Satilla Shores towards 230 Satilla Drive, the McMichael residence.
Okay. So now is that out of the Satilla Shores neighborhood?
No.
Or is that inside?
No, that goes further in.
And is that him continue to run down the street here at 2:13:54?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that also him right there?
Yes, ma'am.
2:14:09, is he out of view at this point?
Yes, ma'am.
What movement do we have up here right under the word view at 2:15:35?
So where the cursor was, as you mentioned, below view, is a white pickup truck pulling out. It's currently 2:15:35. At 2:15:03, you can see movement. It looks like two individuals leaving the residence, getting into that vehicle, and then they leave going the same direction Mr. Arbery did.
All right, so I'm going to back it up to, you said 2:15?
2:15:03.
We're going to start this at 2:14:57.
You see the movement now coming from the house.
And had the truck pulled off at that point?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. How long was it from the time Mr. Arbery cleared off the screen until there was movement at the house coming out?
He steps out of the front door and runs up Satilla Drive. The timestamp I have for him stepping out is 2:13:39.
Mm-hmm.
And then the individuals come out to the truck on camera at 2:15:03. Camera time.
Camera time. So, minute and 20 seconds?
Thereabout.
And then we see the 911 caller coming back down the street. Is that
Yes, ma'am.
correct?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to move it forward a little bit and show you one other thing. The cursor forward and At 2:21:20, what do we have here?
Georgia Power utility truck.
I apologize, ladies and gentlemen, and I apologize, Judge. The cursor and mouse are not working, and I had them fix it at lunch, and it does not seem to have taken the fix. So I'm going to try it again. So what do we have here at 2:27:42?
Glynn County Fire and EMS ambulance and a fire truck.
And starting at 2:34:30, what do we have here?
The Georgia Power utility truck.
What's he doing?
He's going to use the porta potty.
And where's the porta potty?
That's at 220 Satilla Drive.
220 Satilla Drive. So the Georgia Power guy gets out and uses the porta potty at 220 Satilla Drive, and what time is that?
Camera time is 2:35:33.
Where's Mr. Ahmaud Arbery?
I'm trying to do the math in my head for the time difference. He's interacting with the defendants in this case.
Okay.
He's not at the residence.
Did you see the fire trucks and EMS go by?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, then you saw him stop.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is Mr. Arbery lying dead at the time this guy steps onto the property at 220?
It's ridiculous. It's irrelevant. It's the purpose of asking if he's dead at the time somebody's urinating at a porta potty. That's ridiculous.
All right, this is
It's a
beyond
flat
pale.
What's the relevance?
The relevance is that people stopped and got onto this property at 2:20, all kinds of people. And this man, who's a Georgia Power employee, stopped to use this porta potty. And all kinds of people come onto this property, and Mr. Arbery's dead because he's going on this property. That's the relevance of this evidence.
That's a closing argument.
Let's,
So we'd ask the court to instruct the jury to disregard all of that.
I'm sustaining the objection. Let's go ahead and move on.
Yes, Judge. That was at the end of the video provided by Mr. Olson to you.
Yes, ma'am.
So now, direct your attention to State's Exhibit 133, the videos provided by Diego Perez to Officer Adam Jackson. Were you also shown those particular videos?
I recall seeing at least one of the videos during the same time we were doing the phone downloads. The thumb drive that was provided to officers out there was brought back to headquarters, and we played one video, at least one video of what was provided.
Okay, so I obviously got the date wrong. So you're talking about the phone downloads that you're doing after the interview with Gregory McMichael on February 23rd, 2020.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you're still at the headquarters when the Diego Perez jump drive is brought to headquarters.
Yes, ma'am.
And while you're doing the phone download, you got to watch at least one of those videos.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And have you seen the full 10-minute long video that is now State's Exhibit 133?
Yes, ma'am.
And was it fair and accurate and in conjunction with what you had seen on the evening of the 23rd of February?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And I believe this is a joint exhibit. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. This time the state would tender into evidence State's Exhibit 133.
Motion without objection.
That's correct.
Submitted.
So Officer or Detective Marcy, what is our timestamp at the top of State's Exhibit 133?
It's February 23rd, 2020, and it's 1:11:24 p.m.
And to your knowledge, is this off by about 5 minutes?
I recall a discrepancy. I don't know the exact.
Now here at 1:11:59 seconds per this video, what do we have here?
That is Mr. Albenze.
State's Exhibit, or timestamp 1:13:30. Who was that who ran by?
That was Mr. Arbery.
$19.13. What do we have here?
It's a Glynn County patrol vehicle, Glynn County Police Department.
And whose patrol vehicle was that, to your knowledge?
I believe it would be the first on scene, Officer Minshew.
One 2019. What do we have here?
This is Mr. Albenze.
So at the end of that video, my cursor there. So that video did not contain any images of the second responding officer, Duggan, coming into the neighborhood.
No, ma'am.
All right. All right, I'm going to direct your attention forward in time now to April 15th of 2020.
Yes, ma'am.
What action did you take on April 15th of 2020?
Prior to the 15th, we had another meeting at our agency.
Without explaining why you were doing what you were doing,
Okay.
What did you do?
I sent the 911 call and the original video from Mr. Bryant's phone of the incident to ROCIC for audio enhancement to see if anything could be cleared up in that.
Okay, so you sent off both the 911 call made by who?
The 911 call from Mr. Greg McMichael.
Okay, so Mr. McMichael's 911 call, and then Mr. Bryan's cell phone video of the homicide.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So you sent it off on April 15th, 2020. Did you
Yep.
ever receive any results back from that yourself personally?
Yes, ma'am. I received a package back from them on May 14th.
All right. And did you hand that over to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation?
Yes, ma'am.
And then direct your attention to April 16th of 2020. What else did you do?
I recovered a copy of the autopsy photos of Mr. Arbery from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation Crime Lab in Pooler and brought them back and made them part of the file.
And did you document everything you did in this particular case?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. Now, lastly, based on the statements of Gregory McMichael. Sure. States Exhibit 302. So, based on the statements of Gregory McMichael after having interviewed him, did you get a feeling for exactly where he went during the incident leading up to the homicide of Ahmaud Arbery?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and have you previously looked at States Exhibit 302?
Yes, ma'am.
And is this a fair and accurate drawing of the route taken by Gregory McMichael on February 23rd, 2020?
Yes, it is.
At this time, the state would tender into evidence States Exhibit 302.
No objection.
No objection, Your Honor.
No objection.
It's admitted.
They're showing you States 302. So Detective Marcy, when we're over here, what do we have at this location right here? And I'm
I
going
don't see
to
the mouse.
actually use my finger since the person's not working very well. What are we looking at here?
That's 220 Satil Drive,
All right, and then down here, what do we have?
the McMichaels residence.
And so, where do they go? Or where does Gregory McMichael go?
Continuing straight, they go down Burford. They follow the turn at the very end past Mr. Bryant's house. And they follow the left up Zellwood and follow that all the way around to Holmes Road, where they then take another left.
And come down here?
Yes, ma'am. And this is where the incident concludes.
All right, so with regard to Burford Road, do you have any clear indication from Gregory McMichael, due to your interview with him, how many times he went back and forth on this particular road?
We have, from his statements, the initial interaction where Mr. Arbery stops, turns, and runs the other way, and he follows on foot before getting back in the truck, and then the truck proceeding around to Zellwood to Holmes.
All right. And here, do you have any indication of him coming down here if they stopped at any point in time here to confront or yell at Mr. Arbery to stop?
From our interview, the only spot I'm familiar with is where they are finally stopped and the final incident occurs, where we have the red X at.
All right. I may have one moment. Your Honor, this time I will go ahead and pass the witness.
From the defense.
Ms. Delacoste, could we put that back up? I don't know how to use that new one.
I can do it. Thank you.
The last one.
Thanks, Jason.
Is it investigator or detective, Marcy?
Investigator.
Investigator.
Either way
Marcy.
works.
Now, we have only met just for about 5 minutes earlier today for the
Yeah.
first time, right?
Yes, sir.
Let me introduce you to my wife and co-counsel, Laura Ho.
Yeah.
She and I represent Greg McMichael, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, I want to talk to you about 3 topics that you've covered today with the jury. And let's start with the suspicions that you and Greg McMichael talked about that he had regarding Ahmaud Arbery, okay? Ms. Dunikoski asked you on direct during your interview if he used the words burglary in connection with his suspicions about Mr. Arbery. Remember that?
Yes, sir.
And she talked about, did he say he saw a burglary? And you said no. Right? Yeah.
There's been a lot of questions. I'll take your
Sure.
word for it.
Well, the gist of it was to suggest that in your interview with Mr. McMichael, he's saying he's not using the word burglary or theft in connection with what he saw with his own eyes, right?
Correct.
All right. Now, you knew when you interviewed Mr. McMichael that he had been a law enforcement officer like you, right?
I knew he was an investigator with the district attorney's office.
And that meant that you knew that he knew something about probable cause and suspicions, and you were talking to him.
Cause for speculation on this officer's part as to what Mr. McMichael knew or didn't.
Well, they talked about that in their interview.
Let's couch it in those terms as opposed to what he may think Mr. McMichael may have known.
All right, we'll get to what you two talked about then. So let's talk about those beliefs, and what I want to do, you got your transcript right there?
Yes, sir.
What I want to do is use that with you to provide some further context for the jury regarding the comments Greg McMichael made to you during that interview, okay?
Okay.
So let's start at page 8. And I want to start with you at line 13. I'll do the reading, and what you can do is just affirm for the jury that these words I'm reading to you are in fact the words on the transcript, okay?
Yes, sir.
So you are interviewing Greg McMichael, and there at line 13, he's saying to you, anyway, back, getting kind of ahead of myself, we were aware that there had been numerous entering autos and break-ins and such in the neighborhood going on for quite some time. That's what he said to you?
Yes, sir.
Continuing. And of course, this guy was, what was on video was, logic tells you this guy may be the one that's doing it, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, that would be a suspicion that he had, that this guy is the one doing it, referring to burglaries, break-ins, auto thefts, and that sort of thing, right? That's what you're talking about.
Yes, sir.
Now go to page 11. And this is a bit longer part of the conversation. I'm going to read it with you. Again, there at the top of page 11, line 1, Greg McMichael is talking. It's just the two of you in the room at this point, right?
Yes, sir.
And he says to you, and you know, the first thing that comes to mind is this guy that's been breaking into this house down there that they got video, you know, may have been roaming the neighborhood and saw the thing. Now he's talking, when he says the house, this house down there that they got video, was it at that point you understood he was referring to the English house, the one at 220 Satilla Drive that was under construction?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And he's referring to video from that house, some of which we've seen here today during your testimony, right?
That was my understanding. Yes, sir.
Okay. continuing on, you ask him, so this is not just this month it's been going on, right?
Yes, sir.
And he says to you, oh, this has been going on, and the two dashes would suggest that sometimes you two interrupted each other. That's what a transcript says, right?
Yes, sir.
And so he says, oh, this has been going on, interruption, and you say, last month, this has been going on for months? So far, so good?
Yes, sir.
And he says to you, 4 months, yes, right?
Yes, sir.
And you say, going back into 2019?
Yes,
right?
sir.
And he says, oh, absolutely.
Yes, sir.
And you say, by a good bit? And I guess what you mean by a good bit, going back a good bit
Yes, sir.
from February 23, 2020, when this interview's happening. That's what that meant, right?
Yes, sir.
And he answers, yeah, so anyway, so now we've got a missing weapon and the possibility in my mind that the guy that's been breaking in down the road there may have that weapon. That's what he's telling you he's thinking, right?
Yes, sir.
And you say to him, possibility, and that's your subjective opinion? And that's right, that's what you asked him, right?
Yes, sir.
And he says, that's my, just a hunch. I was a cop for 30 years, you know. And you say, right.
Yes, sir.
And then he says, and then you're interrupt and say, was a hunch but a lead, right?
Yes, sir.
And he says, right, exactly.
Yes, sir.
And continuing on, page 12. And you said, we've got that intuition. Now, by we, you're talking to him saying, we police officers, not you and me personally, perhaps, but
Correct,
we,
just law enforcement
we law
and in
enforcement.
general.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
We've got that intuition. And he says to you, exactly. Correct?
Yes, sir.
And you say, I'm on the same page as you, right?
Yes, sir.
And then he says, all right, so I'm out there minding my own business, doing my upholstery job, and I look up, I hear it, I guess I hear it, I don't know. Anyway, I look up, here comes this guy hauling ass, and he's told you the story now. This is the first time through, but he goes through it a few times with you, right?
Yes, sir.
And I mean, he ain't out for no pleasant Sunday jog. He's got it hooked up. That's what he said to you?
Yes, sir.
Like something's on his ass. I don't see anybody chasing him or anything, but I mean, he came out and I watched him, and of course, when he came by, I got a really good look at him. Right?
Yep. Yes, sir.
And then he describes short pants. Every time we see him on the video, has short pants on, has black t-shirt on, but white t-shirt, he says.
Yes, sir.
Apparently correcting himself. And he's got short dreads, okay? So, I mean, it's the same guy. That's what he said to you?
Yes, sir.
All right, continuing on with the same topic of suspicions, go to page 24. And we'll start at line 15. Are you with me?
I'm there.
Okay, but 14, just to get the context, he says, but he, referring to this person he suspects, who turns out to be Mr. Arbery, he keeps going back over and over and over again to this damn house. And he's talking, that is, Greg McMichael's talking to you. This is still in the interview, correct?
Yes, sir.
Plus, we've had numerous entering autos and other burglaries and thefts out of yards and that sort of thing throughout the neighborhood, right?
Yes, sir.
So you know he'd be a prime suspect. And he's saying a suspect in his mind. He's telling you that that's what he's thinking.
Yes, sir.
Right? And then he goes on to tell you, but anyway, Diego...
The next section does not fall rule of completeness as it relates to the upper portion of this section. Does the state would object?
It does complete the context. I can show it to the court if you'd like. The lines 19 through 25.
Starting at but anyway, right?
Pardon?
Starting at but anyway?
Line 19.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, to 25, the end of the page.
Yeah, I'm going to sustain it. It looks like it just transitions into the topic that is necessary for completeness on the statement above. So it's sustained. That last paragraph from 18 or 19 down, that just goes into a different area.
Different from Mr. McMichael's suspicions of who the person is that he's just seen run past.
Yeah, that's what I just ruled on. There appears to be a transition there into a different thought, so I'm sustaining it based on what I'm reading from that portion of the transcript that I can see.
Yeah, I'd like to defend my argument that this is in context of his identification of the person he suspects. And without reading any of it, it simply goes into his description of the person he saw as matching the videos that he'd seen.
I understand. I've read it, I've taken it, I've looked at it, and I've ruled on it.
Okay. All right, let's go to page 43. And we're going to start at line 23. And it's still you, Investigator Marcy, talking with Mr. Greg McMichael, still in the interview room. And at line 23, he's telling you, but we got a missing weapon. We got a guy who breaks in, this house down here. You with me?
Yes, sir.
And that's what he was telling you, right?
Yes, sir.
And it's probably, I think, if you'll check with them, I think there's other houses that they're pretty certain this guy's broken into as well, and entering autos. There's been all kinds of damn shit stolen. That's what he says to you.
Yes, sir.
And then you say to him, we're about to dump everything that's ever happened in that neighborhood, right?
Yes, sir.
And dump mean investigate.
Go through our records system. Yes, sir.
And he says, yeah, and you say, and see if we, and then he interrupts you. And then he says, but anyway, in my mind, there's a good possibility this guy's armed. That was my thought process and my intention. And I know it was my son's as well, was to stop this guy so that he could be arrested or be identified at the very least.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, the state also asked you on this section right here if they ever stopped chasing and just went home when they read for you on, or you read on page 45, line 6, where Mr. McMichael is telling you they are yelling at him to stop, And Greg McMichael says to you, he wasn't having none of that. In other words, it didn't look like he was going to comply and stop at all, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. So let's go back to the previous page at line 14. That's page 44, line 14. And this is in the same context. And Mr. McMichael says to you, you know, if he had turned around and said, hey man, I'm, you know, Joe, I live around the corner, and you know, I'm just out running, you know, it would have been a whole different ball game. He's telling you that?
Yes, sir.
But there,
What page are we on?
44, line 14.
Thank you.
It would have been a whole different ball game, and there was no doubt, especially his actions. When we would get up next to him, I mean, you know, I was as close from here to the wall from him. Now the wall, you're in a small interview room, and the wall is just a few feet from you, right?
Yeah, you could just touch it. It's
That close.
yes, sir.
I'm in the back of the pickup truck, and you know, he has no intention of stopping.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then let's flip over on the same topic to page 65. Now this is when investigator Noe Healy has come into the room, and the two of you are now talking briefly with Mr. McMichael. You remember that part when he showed up?
Let me get there with you.
Page 65, and I'll start at line 7.
I'm going to object. I'm objecting based on the fact that this is a suggestion by Officer Noe-Hilly, and it has nothing to do with the sections around it. And it's not the words of Greg McMichael, it's Greg McMichael agreeing with something Investigator Noe-Hilly's putting out there on page 65.
Well, that's not exactly accurate. You would like to see it?
No, because it sounds like it goes to Wade anyway. I mean, you can go ahead and redirect it
Okay.
and clarify.
Okay, so Investigator Marcy, we're at page 65, line 7. And Noe Healy's come into the room with you and Mr. McMichael. You remember that?
Yes, sir. I don't believe this is me. I believe this is a typo on who was speaking. The
Oh, it's
words
a
are
typo?
correct, but the typo saying Investigator Marcy versus Investigator Noe-Hilly, I believe this is a typo on the investigator.
What line are you talking about?
10.
Where it says Investigator Marcy?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You're saying that's a typo, it should be Investigator Noe Healy?
Yes, sir.
All right. You were there?
This time I was downloading the phones.
All right. So you're saying that the transcript is inaccurate here, and that it should have said Investigator Noe Healy.
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, the state asked you early on if you had reviewed the transcript
Yes, sir.
and asked you if it was an accurate account of Mr. McMichael's words while he was in that interview room.
The words are correct. The spoken words are correct, but
Okay.
the investigator identity is typo is mistaken there.
All right, and this is your interview with Mr. McMichael, so we'll continue. And we'll just do the part where Mr. McMichael is talking. And for context, the subject we're talking about is...
Objection. First off, I believe the page we're on, Detective Marcy is not even in the room. So going into this right now, when Noe-Hilly's in the room talking to Greg McMichael would be inappropriate.
Yeah, all right. If I can defend, the transcript says Investigator Marcy. And we received this in discovery from the state. And as you know, Your Honor, we've talked about with the state what parts can be read. And I'm looking at an agreement in yellow highlighted that this is a part that can be read. And I can show it to the
No,
court.
I don't doubt it, but the investigator has indicated that he wasn't present for it. so I'm not sure.
Well-
Even with the mistake in the there's a way to work around that, but if he wasn't present for it,
Well, I didn't know. I just saw his name, and I just found out right now that he's saying that's not him. So I'm learning that right now. So if there's a way around it, other than me just asking him, are these the words in the transcript Mr. McMichael said on a videotaped interview that he's reviewed? That would be the way to work around it, in my view.
well, the state's made an objection, so.
Yes. This transcript was created by the state and approved and proofread by the defense before it was ever handed to this detective, first off. Secondly, yeah, there's a typo. The state agrees that this is not Investigator Marcy. That's wrong. I don't know why none of the lawyers ever caught this.
Ms. Dunkowski, hold on just a second, hold on. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could please have you take a step outside.
All right, for jury. Please proceed.
Is Nohilly going to be testifying?
Yes, he's the next witness. That's why I didn't know if there was a problem.
Well, I didn't know he was the next witness. If that's the case, I can do it with him. I didn't know it was not him till just now.
My apologies, Your Honor. Ms. Dunkowski informed me that O'Healy would be the next witness. Over the lunch break, I forgot to notify Mr. Ho. My apologies.
You don't have to tell me who their witnesses are. I'm cool with that.
Thank you for falling on your sword, Mr. Goff. Unnecessary at this point. You live to talk another day. Okay.
Well, if that's the case, I'll just wait and do it with him. Then just that one little section is all I was going to do. Unless, knowing that I would do that, would it be a problem just to do it with him? If so, I'll do it with Nohilly.
Please do it with Nohilly.
Okay, I'll do it with Nohilly. And I've just got one more area with Investigator Marcy, and I'll be done with him.
Okay. Figured it could be solved. Let's go ahead and get the panel.
Please proceed.
All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, appreciate your patience when we have these short breaks, but we've resolved what we need to resolve, and I believe we're ready to continue.
All right, Investigator Marcy, thank you for that correction. That's not you, that's Nohilly, who's talking at this point on page 65, correct?
Yes, sir.
Uh-oh, I thought we were missing one.
Oh, I'm sorry, that seat's blocked. Yes. Thank you. All right, we're back on.
Okay, Investigator Marcy, we were just establishing that it was Nohilly and not you, page 65, where I was just about to ask you about a portion of the testament or the statement by Mr. McMichael, right?
Yes, sir.
And you and I just learned that Nohilly's the next witness, so you and I are going to skip this and go to a different area. So I want to go to page 35. This is the last topic I'm going to cover with you.
Yes, sir.
Now, page 35, starting at line 21. Now, this is part of what you testified to on direct. The statement that Mr. McMichael said to you that the state brought out, that he was in the back of the truck with his 357, right?
Yes, sir.
And I want you to read, because they went down to line 25 where he says, I said stop, you know, I'll blow your fucking head off or something. I was trying to convey to this guy, we're not playing, you know. You remember talking about that earlier?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now I want you to go back and read silently to yourself lines 21 down to 25, and let me know when you're done.
Yes, sir.
And then I want to go over to page 36, line 3, and I'm going to go ahead and add out loud 2 more lines. Mr. McMichael's saying to you, well, the guy, I'm trying to...
Objection. This is not part of the rule of completeness. This does not go with the section just read.
It does, Your Honor. I can show it to you.
Yeah, let's see what you got.
You want to see it?
Yep.
It's just the part I have highlighted in yellow.
Can you give me 35?
Yeah, it's just that part that I've highlighted in yellow.
Right, but the previous, just so I understand where we are.
Yeah, 35.
I do.
34.
It's 34.
Yeah, I'm sorry, this is 35 and 36. I'm objecting to what's on 36.
I know, he asked me
Correct.
for 34.
Oh, okay.
I just gave it to him.
So it was just, what was just read in came off of 34.
You see the dark yellow?
Yep.
That's what the state read. And then the lighter yellow on those 2 lines.
I'd say, all right, I thought you were dovetailing in from, all right, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, that's fine. That's over with.
So, Investigator Marcy, he overruled.
So I'm still confused. Which part?
It's just, it's 2 lines as I understand.
No, I need that too. So.
Okay. I understand. Thank you, Judge.
Okay, so we're at 36. This is right after this statement we just heard. I was trying to convey to this guy, we're not playing, you know. And then he says to you, well, the guy, I'm trying to think what happened next. It was a blur. See that?
Yes, sir.
Now, what I want you to do, so we can talk about the context of this statement about blowing his head off, is read from line 4 to line 15 silently, and let me know when you're done.
I'm there.
You good?
Yep.
Oh, you're a fast reader. Okay, good. Now, given everything you've just read, some to yourself and some out loud, beginning on page 35, line 20, all the way down to 36, line 16, and adding to that what we see up on this board that you said earlier, where the red bubble with the white X in it
Yes, sir.
is the spot on Holmes Road where the truck was stopped and the encounter with Mr. Arbery occurred when the shooting happened,
Yes, sir.
right?
Yes, sir.
And you said that's the only place on Holmes Road that you were aware from your interview with Greg McMichael that they'd had any contact with Mr. Arbery.
Yes, sir.
right? So now, in light of that and what you've just read here, this comment about stop, blowing his head off, would have occurred right there.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you're aware from the case that also right there at that same place, at that same time, Mr. McMichael is standing in the back of his pickup truck, his son's pickup truck, with a cell phone to his ear talking to 911 in those final seconds before the fatal encounter with Mr. Arbery.
Yes, sir.
You're aware of all that?
Yes, sir.
And you would agree, would you not, that if a person is remembering or trying to remember the exact words he said, that the best source to know what he said would be a recording of it?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Anything from the remaining defendants?
Yes, sir. Give me 1 second. Investigating.
Council needs to move, and one of the other council, I can't see the board, but if council needs to move, they're welcome to do so. If we could just make sure they don't block any of the jurors.
And we have a challenge here of getting everything in view for everybody, and I will do the best that I can to make it happen. One of the things I wanted just to make sure that I'm on the same page with you is as you were taking some questions from Mr. Hogue, I was taking.
Hold on a second. You just give her room to get past you.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I can't see any of this stuff, thank you.
You're not going to be able to see it if I move it over here, are you? We'll bring it back later.
Can't read that this far away. Yeah.
Okay, it's small, right? That's fine. Okay, but I want to make sure that I'm on the same page with you about your testimony. And so I was taking some notes, and just to the extent that I've got my note taking right, you were talking a lot about generally and very specifically the conversation that you had with Greg McMichael, right?
Correct.
And we were talking in that conversation about how Mr. McMichael was talking with you on the subject of crime in the neighborhood.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that there were entering autos and burglaries and break-ins, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that it had been going on for months, even far back as 2019.
Yes, sir.
The missing weapon and Mr. McMichael's concern or fear that Mr. Arbery may have had that weapon.
Yes, sir.
Okay. That Mr. Arbery was the same guy
Yes, sir.
who over and over and over and over again went into the house, the prime suspect, so to speak.
Yes, sir.
There was also some discussion about what Mr. Greg McMichael was at least doing out there that day.
Yes,
right?
sir.
To stop this guy, right?
Yes, sir.
To stop him. Meaning, if you were to open that door and you were to come out and I stopped you, that's what you understand Mr. Greg McMichael meant. To stop this guy, to prevent him from leaving.
Yes, sir.
So that he could be arrested.
Yes, sir.
Figure out who he is, identified.
Yes, sir.
Okay. The discussion that you had with Mr. McMichael also dealt a little bit more generally with theft about where in the neighborhood it had been happening. You recall discussing with him that the thefts had been happening throughout the neighborhood.
I believe that's correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. So to say throughout, we have several streets, as you can see from the map up here, and I've got a little bit bigger of a map here. But the streets that you understand to be in the neighborhood are Satilla Drive,
Yes, sir.
Burford,
Yes, sir.
Zellwood,
Yes, sir.
Holmes,
Yes, sir.
and Jones.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you, when talking with Greg McMichael, we're talking about crime that was happening throughout the entire neighborhood, right?
I believe so. I'm trying to remember the word throughout. That's why there's the pause. But I
And
believe
it's
so.
on, if you want to check it,
I
it's
would.
page 24, line 17.
Yep. Thank you for that.
Great, no problem. And you understood that not only was it happening in homes, but it was also homes as in people's residences, but
Yes,
that it
sir.
was happening out of their cars as well.
Yes, sir.
Objection, form of question. That's not what this officer understands. It's what Gregory McMichael said to this officer.
Fair enough. Let's go ahead, Couch, in terms of
Yeah, that's
transfer.
what he said to you,
Yes, sir.
which then you incorporated into your brain to think about what's happening in this neighborhood, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you also were told that these crimes were happening not just at night, but in the middle of the day.
Yes, sir.
That is a specific thing that you know as an officer, that a lot of crimes happen in the middle of the day,
Yes.
including burglaries.
Crimes doesn't matter what time of day it
It doesn't
is.
matter what time. You're familiar that burglaries occur a lot during the middle of the day,
Yes, sir.
okay? Even on Sunday,
Even on Sunday.
especially on Sunday.
Even on.
Even on Sunday.
Even on-
Okay. So the issue is that as you're beginning to get this information from Mr. Greg McMichael, is it true that you're doing so that you can get an idea of what has been going on in the neighborhood in generally about crime in the neighborhood?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that you can then, as you're investigating this case, try to figure out what exactly happened on February 23rd.
Yes, sir.
What it was that Greg McMichael and Travis McMichael were doing out there that day, right? Why
sir.
were they out there that day, right?
Yes, sir.
Also, because Mr. Arbery is involved in this perceived conflict, you, as you step into this case, are trying to figure out why Mr. Arbery is in the neighborhood that day,
Yes, sir.
right? So in trying to step into a case like this, an investigation like this, you want to try to figure out what is in the minds of these three people, Mr. Arbery and the two McMichaels.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And part of your inquiry is, what is Mr. Arbery doing in 220 Satilla,
Yes, sir.
right? Like, what's the purpose for him being there, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. One of the things that you have learned over the years is how to conduct an interview of a witness.
Yes, sir.
And in your training, you have had some class instruction on how to do that, right?
Yes.
So you were asked initially if you were post-certified.
Yes, sir.
In your post-certifications, you have a large classroom portion of your training that deals with interviewing witnesses.
I've had advanced training. Basics a little light on the subject.
Okay.
But I've had interview and interrogations through the state of Georgia, as well as interview techniques through FLETC.
Okay. These are multiple classes
Yes, sir.
just on the subject of how to ask a person about what happened during a volatile situation.
Essentially, yes, sir.
Right. Interrogation being maybe trying to get the person to
A little more
admit something.
accusatory, a little higher tempo. Yes, sir.
Okay. But in terms of talking with witnesses, you have become accustomed to witnesses who have been in the middle of a violent situation
Yes, sir.
or a situation that has been very unsettling or upsetting.
Yes, sir.
And would you agree that even though people may be, some of them smarter than others or stronger than others or have greater emotional fortitude, that a traumatic situation can cause anybody to have difficulty in talking about what just happened to them?
Absolutely.
Okay. So in a situation, the teaching that you have is really how to lead that person through the interview.
I'd be careful in the word lead, as in I don't want
It's a term
to
of
give
art.
them. Yeah, I don't want to give them
You're right.
the answers.
If the witness could answer the question before being interrupted,
Yeah, let him ask the question.
Simple as that. Lead. I don't want to lead them through and give them the answers, but guide, direct. Maybe being a softer term for the same thing. Keep them focused on one topic and then move to the next topic.
Right.
So we're not, trying to deal with everything at once, but one bite of the apple at a time.
Right. It's easy to pick up when a person is getting kind of off track and is kind of all over the place.
Yes.
So
Yes.
what you may do is you may say, hold on 1 second. Let's go back to what you were just talking about. And not tell them the answer, but lead them through a set of or series of questions that'll help them break it down for you.
Yes, sir.
And you really control that.
I try to, unless they're going. If they're on a track, let them go.
Right. So as an example in this case, where Greg McMichael says, we've had burglaries, break-ins, and auto thefts all over this neighborhood. That's something that is recorded, and it's now maintained as the record of what he said.
Yes,
right?
sir.
But it would be on you to say, hold on, let's talk about the burglaries first, right?
Yes, sir. And generally, we're going to try and figure that out.
Okay, and then you could say, just starting with the burglaries, where was it?
Correct?
Okay, and go through it step by step, right?
Yes, sir.
Same thing with auto break-ins,
Yes, sir.
right? You could ask Mr. Greg McMichael, whose auto got broken into? Do you have information? Could you give me the name of that person? Because I'd like to follow up on it. That's something that you could ask him?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So to the extent that Greg McMichael is all over the map sometimes in this conversation, you certainly have the ability to slow him down and get him to answer specific questions that may clear up confusion in your mind.
Yes, sir.
Okay. By the end of this conversation that you had with him, though, you were clear that Mr. McMichael had formed a belief that Mr. Arbery was the person responsible for breaking into this house down the street.
Referring to 220 Satilla.
226.
Yes, sir.
And that Mr. McMichael was under the belief that there had been a burglary by Mr. Ahmaud Arbery in that house.
objection. Former question. In addition, it calls for this officer's, you were under the belief that he's under the belief that this is what's going on is inappropriate. We're talking about the words of Greg McMichael right now, not what this officer believes he believes.
Well, it's important, I think, to allow this officer to talk about how he went through his investigations and the decisions that he made. And part of this is him, like he said, determining what was going on. What was Greg McMichael doing that day? What was Mr. Arbery doing in the house that day? For this officer, I think it's important to show that he had made some conclusions as part of his investigation that I think is going to lead to some of the additional things that he did in the case.
Well, then you need to rephrase the question. What these statements are by Greg McMichael. You can ask him what he did next. If that then leads you there, then maybe, but not the way it's currently asked, so it's sustained.
All right. So once you got the information, Greg expressed to you his belief
Yes, sir.
that Mr. Arbery was committing thefts inside that home.
Objection. That is not what Greg McMichael said at all. And paraphrasing this is inappropriate. Either specifically what Greg McMichael said, but to paraphrase it this way is outside. That's for the jury to determine.
Well, I can rephrase it even more specific.
Well, let's keep to what he actually stated. It's
Okay.
sustained.
Thank you. Greg McMichael told you that Mr. Arbery was the prime suspect of the burglaries that he believed were committed in 220 Satilla.
Taking the full context of the conversation, yes, sir.
Yeah, he used those words,
Yeah,
prime suspect.
he did.
Okay. Now, you then went to gather some additional information or look into Ahmaud Arbery, did you not?
In what way? Like video from out there? Yes.
So you gather, well, there's an objection, so I'll pause.
Objection. Objection to where we're going with this. This is not about Ahmaud Arbery. This is the statements of Greg McMichael.
Your Honor, this officer has done more than just take statements of Greg McMichael. This officer is one of the main investigators in the case. I don't understand why we're not allowed to go into other things that he's done.
Well, probably depends on what else he's done, but
I'm going to go
sure
very
the counsel
generally.
is aware of the evidence in the case and will ask an appropriate question.
Okay.
At this point, all I've heard is the beginning of it.
Okay. So in terms of you trying to figure out what was going on that day, and Mr. Ahmaud Arbery, you did some investigation into Ahmaud Arbery.
I gathered video from Mr. English and spoke to Mr. Olson about video
Okay. To see how many additional times Mr. Arbery may have been in that residence.
to gather video from the 23rd,
Gather-
February 23rd, 2020.
Okay. Did you become aware of Mr. Arbery being inside 220 Satilla on other occasions than February 23rd?
I did through other investigators and the media.
Okay, well, let's not talk about what the media did, but as an investigator, don't you rely on the subpart investigations of other
Absolutely.
investigators in a case?
Yes, sir.
And that sort of information flows up the chain to investigators like yourself
Yes, sir.
to inform you
Yes,
of
sir.
what's happened in the case, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you had become aware of other videos wherein Mr. Arbery was in 220 Satilla Shores at night.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you yourself have been inside 220 Satilla Shores at night.
Yes, sir.
You went out there to kind of take a look around to see what it looked like, right?
Yes, sir.
And so when you go into 220 Satilla Shores at night, there are no working lights inside the residence at that point.
No, sir.
Right. There's a street light that throws a little bit of light that way, but other than that, that's the only light.
That's it. Yes, sir.
Okay. And you then walked the entire property at night to determine everything that was there that could be seen, right?
Yes, sir.
When you did that, there was not a boat being kept inside the boat garage.
No, sir.
Okay. That had been removed when you did that.
I recall the boat being at the lift.
Okay. Off, not inside the house.
Not inside the house.
There's
no, sir.
another boat back on the left.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
While we're discussing, just a reminder before the clerk has an issue, it's nearly 4 o'clock.
Point where we can stop.
Yeah, it's not right now.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, let's just take a 15-minute recess, and we'll come back for continuation of the evidence in 15 minutes. Thank
All
you.
right for the jury, please. Please be seated.
All right, we'll take 15 minutes. I can't remember what the title is. Detective, investigator? Investigator, thank you. You can go ahead and step down. I remind you that you're under oath. Do not discuss your testimony during the break with anybody. Yes, sir. All right, you'll be back in about 50, well, let's say 10 minutes, and that way we can get everybody placed. Okay, thank you.